Hi guys, welcome to the Rethink podcast. This is your Mallet and myself, Raheem Sandiford, and we're going to be discussing the topic of how and when to tell a client no.
You love the full names now. They'll be able to identify us anywhere in the world.
It's just natural, it just comes off naturally.
Clearly.
Hey, anyways, so
We are polite here in Barbados.
to give some context to the topic, say you are a designer or you're anybody in the service-based industry, and you have a client and things just aren't going well, and you're thinking about, distancing yourself from the client. This is where we would have to learn how to take next steps into how and when to tell that client no. So
I'd like to add some context to that too, because there's so many circumstances under which you can tell a client no. It can be that you're trying to onboard a client and you have to tell them, yeah, this isn't the right fit for us. Or it could be that you may not want to get rid of the client, but they may have a specific request of you in which you have to tell them no. So no is a big topic.
Right.
There's several different dimensions. So I just wanted to add that dimension.
yeah. So that falls out the context. So to expand on that point,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the reasons why you should tell a client no?
Okay. Some of the reasons why you should tell a client no, not simply that you just don't want to do it. But for example, if there is a project that really and truly goes against your moral code, can you sleep at night with yourself if you do this project? If you go down this road, or will it bother you? You don't want to you don't want to sacrifice your mental health, your well-being for money. Because at the end of the day, you're probably going to have to end up spending all the money on your mental health and your well-being, right? But also, if they're asking you to break any laws, it's when you tell a client, definitely you tell a client no, and probably advise them against going down the road they were thinking of going down as well. But also, you may not have the time to do something. There may be a time where you tell the client no because of your schedule. It may be a last minute request from the client where, we need this done urgently. Can you just quickly do this for us? And no can take on different forms. But you could tell the client, no, I can't do it for you now, but hey, I can do it for you later. So last minute requests, things that are out of scope for the project.
Yeah.
A client comes with a request that does not fit the scope of the project you're working on. I think this is one of the biggest requests that we as designers get from clients or creatives get from clients or anyone who has a defined service scope. This is one of the biggest questions you get from clients. Like, given a scenario, you're in a job with a client that you've written up a proposal, you said what you're going to offer and for that price. And the client comes along, oh, shoot, I know we agreed to XYZ, but I didn't think that I had ABC to do as well. Could you just do that for me, in addition to what you're doing already? And there's a way to tell the client no to that. I don't want to get into necessarily how you do it, but that's where you tell a client no, and you can have no with provisions. So it's not just a hard no and be like, no, I'm doing that. But, there's no with provisions. There are ways you can tell a client no and still come out with a positive response from the client amicably on the other end of the request.
Yeah.
It's not just no, go on about your business. It's no, but, or no, also, or no, and. There are ways you can say no that softens the blow and leads to a different conclusion rather than just and doing it.
Fair enough. So, in your experience, I think you've been in business for about 14 years now?
16 years,
16 years.
A whole person.
Yeah.
Like a whole teenager.
Yeah.
What can they do at 16? They can drive. A whole person that can drive.
Yeah.
Not drink, though. Apparently.
Yeah. So, in what situations have you told a client no?
We've told clients no for many of the things that I mentioned. I remember we had a client who wanted to use photos that were from a photo studio, and they brought the photos to us. The photos had watermarks on them, and we were like, watermark photos mean that you haven't paid for the photos. These can be used for mock-up, but we cannot produce a final product for you to send to print. And it's like, no, we're not going to do this for you to send to print, because you need to contact the photographer and get the final photos released without the watermark. Then we can do it for you. So that's kind of a no with a provision. It's like, we're not doing this until you do that because we recognize something else needs to be done on your part. So being able to look down the road as a creative can also help you to be able to tell your clients no, but advise them on how to resolve the situation. So give them a solution rather than just saying no. Other times is when I've had to tell a client no because I really wanted to do a project, but it's like, right now, we don't have the time. And the client may be like, oh, you don't have the time? Here's a good way to tell a client no in that situation. Hey, listen, I really want to work on this for you, but I don't have the time right now in our schedule. Based on your deadline, when you need it for, we will not be able to fulfill the job in that time for you. I'd rather tell you no now than tell you yes and let you down. You know? And if you and offer suggestion, if you can push that timeline, I'd be happy to work with you on this project in X amount of weeks or months, etc., where we can fulfill the job for you. Or we can recommend someone to do it for you. You know, so you give the client options, right? For first option would be keeping it at home, keeping it with you if they can push their timeline. The other option is finding a solution for them to get it done with somebody else you know and trust.
Okay. Well, so far you talked about certain scenarios which are, which I guess you would say is like it's a matter of just a bad circumstance of you not being able to do the work.
Right.
Right. But like, have you ever had a situation where the client was just not somebody you had to work with, like?
The client wasn't a good fit.
Like either the client was a good fit or the relationship itself wasn't good. Like, have you ever had a client relationship break down and become sour in a sense, or less than amicably? Like,
I think anyone has had that happen. Yeah, we have. We've had that happen. Yeah. How did we deal with it?
Yeah, like have you ever had to fire a client?
Yes, and for those who don't know, as creatives, we can fire clients. It is a superpower that you wield very carefully. Like what did Uncle Ben tell Peter Parker? With great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, like it's something you don't like to do. It's something you want to kind of not try. Don't be so quick to pull that trigger. Let that be a matter of last resort. And usually it becomes a matter of last resort when you've set up the project the right way in the first place, in terms of all the paperwork in the beginning, contract structures, making sure that all of that stuff is in place. And there's an exit clause in your contract structure as well that shows there's certain behaviors or certain circumstances that are breach of contract. And that may very well come on, you can say what's breach of contract for you and what's breach of contract for the client. So hopefully the client reads the contract before they sign it, and yes, they should sign contracts. Don't start work without a signed contract. Saves you, trust me, it saves you a lot of help. So those terms, the rules of engagement, are previously laid out for everyone first. So the client should know what's in breach of contract. People will try to push boundaries often, but they'll know. So then when it comes time that something's been breached, not only you don't wait till the person fully breaches it either. Say, hey, listen, we're kind of reaching the boundaries here. Like, give some precursors. Like, I think we're getting outside of scope, or where we're going is kind of leading to a breach of contract area. I think we need to sit down at the table and go through our contract again, make sure we're all on the same page. Again, these are all best practices that not always practice, but things that should be best practice. So let's come back to the table. Let's look the contract, make sure we're all within the scope of what we're supposed to be doing. And that way, by the time you get to firing the client, it shouldn't be firing the client as your first resort. It's become a case where, okay, this has been going on, this has been continued for a period of time, and you've not resolved what we said was breach of contract, so we have to end the relationship. So there should be a foundation. And usually having proper contract structure set up with someone, a legal professional, will be very, very helpful to get your contract set up. If you can get a template contract that you can use with for all projects you're working on, that is from someone within your jurisdiction too. Because one of the things we found is that just finding a template contract online may be good to give you a general understanding of how contracts are structured, but you have to be careful that it falls under the legal guidelines of the jurisdiction you're operating in, the country you're working in, whether you're a local country or the country you're doing business in. Because if not, you could have a contract that's moot. That doesn't mean anything because it wasn't structured in the right place. Way to start. I know that's a little bit off topic, but all of that leads into your ability to tell the client no or to fire a client.
Right.
Because there needs to be a structure in place that they have breached in order for you to be able to say, we're firing the client. Right? And so once you get to that point, yeah, we've had a situation where you had to fire a client. So that's a long-winded answer to get to the point, to get to the juicy matter of yes, we've had to do it. Wherein the individual wasn't paying. And they consistently had an excuse after excuse after excuse about why they couldn't pay. This employee of theirs had a situation, a domestic situation, it was touching stories, and it pulls on your heart because as a business person, you're also a human being, right?
Yeah.
So, you don't want to be a hard person. And I had to come to the distinction that while I sympathize with your employee that you said you took up all your money and gave to because of the difficult situation they were in, as a human being, I sympathize. As a businessman, I want my money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there has to be a distinction. And sometimes it can be a hard distinction to make. It can seem like you're inhuman, but you have to kind of draw the line.
Yeah.
Because if you don't draw the line, people will keep tugging on your emotions and using your emotions against you as a human being to kind of beat you down in business as a business person. So you have to set those boundaries and those parameters very clearly. And business is business. And it may seem harsh, but you have to do that because if not, people can take advantage. So we've had to fire a client in circumstances like that.
Okay. So, I know you mentioned earlier about trying to make sure you tell the client no in the most amicable way, right? So, for instance, what are some of the other ways in which you should tell a client no? I mean, within the framework that is amicable. Like, have you ever had to be, let's say, more stern with how you told a client no? Or did you ever have to tell a client no and then recommend somebody else for the job?
Oh, yeah. That first situation I mentioned just now, that was a very stern no. That was like a hard stop. That was like a bram. I am done with the excuses. We out of this. There's no turning back. We've made a decision. We are no longer working with you. That was a very firm, stern, hard no. And that was at a point too in business where I was very young in business, like in the first couple of years being in business. It was a very good learning experience. And one of the things that I would say to that point is that with that particular client, it's going to sound weird, but I got a bad impression of them. And again, you want to leave room for giving people a second chance and that kind of thing. But never ignore that first impression that you get when you meet someone. Never ignore it. Because that tells you who they are. And you tell people who you are in that first interaction as well. So be mindful of how you come across to people and who you are in that interaction. But they tell you who you are. People tell you who they are. And the feeling I got from the client, I didn't ignore it, but I kind of backburnered the feeling. And that led to almost a year of stress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that led to almost a year of stress. And I was like, you know what? Or maybe even 2 years, quite frankly, of stress. I was like, you know what? That initial feeling was correct. So there's a level of intuition after you get to meet somebody, have a conversation with them, talk to them. You kind of suss out who people are. And their chances are doing the same thing, should be doing the same thing on the other side of the table from you. Trying to get to know who you are and that kind of thing. So all of that can lead to no, and I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting exactly what you asked. But I just have to get that pointed, because that's important.
Right.
What you asked again?
The question was what are the other ways in which you should tell a client no?
Okay. Right. So there are other methods you can use, and I alluded to those originally. You can tell a client no, like, okay, I'd love to do this for you. I'd really love to work on this project for you, but right now the timing is off. We don't have, it will take us X amount of time, like I said, 6 to 8 weeks to fulfill your work. And right now you're looking to have it done in 2 weeks. If you can extend your timeline, we'd be happy to work with you on it.
Right.
But right now, given our workflow and our process, it's going to take us 6 to 8 weeks to get that done. And we can't contract 6 to 8 weeks into 2 weeks worth of time. So, I really hope that you get it done. It's an exciting project, and I hope you find somebody to work on it with you. Or if you know somebody that you can recommend, you could always recommend that person at that point. There could be budgetary differences. What you would propose for the project, and this is why it's good to get into budget in the first meeting.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the first meeting, after you've had a good conversation with the client, you can give them a range, like I mentioned before in the episode on pricing, so that you can say, hey, listen, based on what your proposed budget is, or this may not be a good fit. It might be relationship wise that you might realize sitting in the meeting with this individual that the meeting is awkward. We had a meeting like that one time with someone who was doing accounting services or something like that.
Yeah.
They came to us. We're always eager to onboard new clients, to meet new people, build more relationships. But the meeting was just awkward. And I don't think I said it in the meeting, but after the meeting, I met with other colleague, Michael, and we just kind of were like, I don't think that's going to be a good fit.
Right, yeah.
And they never got back to us. So we guessed correctly from the meeting. The other meetings where you meet with people and you're like, you click right away. You just know. And so you listen to those things. And so sometimes in the meeting it might be good to bring it up where you're like, it's an interesting project. I don't think we're the right fit for you.
Right, yeah.
But I can see it's an interesting project. Give us a couple days and we can recommend somebody to you that may be a bit of a better fit for you relationship wise, or personality wise, maybe a better fit for you. That's another way to tell somebody no. Usually with no's, I find it's easier to give a softer letdown than like a hard bram. No, we're not going to do it. Because at the end of the day, you want to preserve some level of relationship with people.
Right.
Because chances are in situations where you're saying no, you're not saying no to a bad person.
Right, yeah.
You're just saying no to awkward circumstances. Now, sometimes it could just be a bad person,
Yeah.
right? You still want to come out of a situation though where you're interacting with a bad person, keeping your integrity.
Right.
So we had a few years ago, we had a break with a really big client. And it was a case where we recognized that the relationship was being strained from their end.
Right.
They were making requests and they wanted to put us in a position that was beneficial to them, but not beneficial to us. And so we countered with our own requests. And we said, well, this is going to be the situation. This is what we are requesting of our relationship, because we realize the relationship is a bit one-sided, favoring you. And we never expected the firestorm that was going to happen, right? Like, our requests were reasonable. But because of the nature of the relationship they were seeking to build, it was almost an affront to them. And they responded like it was fire and brimstone from their end.
Big problem.
And completely if anyone who saw the situation recognized it was completely undeserving from our side.
Yeah.
But it's a case where that can happen. You can have a situation where a client responds in a very unfavorable manner, and you still have to be able to maintain your integrity in saying no. You still have to be able to maintain your integrity through that breakup with a client that may not be clean. It may not be, it's going to be messy, but you still have to maintain your integrity throughout that process, because you're only as good as your last deal, right? You're only as good as your last reputation or whatever. And you have to be able to make sure that at the end of it, one, you can sleep at night. You can put your head on your pillow and you can sleep when you've told this client no. You can sleep when you've broken off with this client. You also have to be able to make sure that as much as depends on you, and I've almost quoted the Bible there, but as much as depends on you, you do whatever you can to make that as clean a break as possible.
Right.
As much as you can, don't contribute to the mess. because it's only going to blow back on you, right? So you don't want to be so close to the blast that you get all the shrapnel hitting you.
The aftershock.
Right? You want to be able to be, wash your hands of a situation, be as clean away from it as possible. And you don't want to lower your standards either.
Right.
There's also the whole idea of you don't want to be dragged down to the dirty tactics that someone else may do.
Right.
So you have to be able to know what your standards are, know what your integrity is, and maintain it all throughout the process of saying no and protecting yourself. So there's a lot to saying no, just then 2 letters, N-O.
Yeah.
And for those who are not Gen Z, the full stop. Because full stops apparently are a thing now. That mean you're angry.
It's like, imagine saying that in real life. It's like, I'm done with you. Full stop.
I know, right? Really and truly, the exclamation point is the one that should really carry the weight. But no, it is the full stop. I surrender.
Oh my god. Our generation needs help.
I know, right? So we've covered budget, we've covered time, we've covered like bad breakups, we've covered other things too. So
the last thing I want to cover is so far it's kind of been alluded to in what you've discussed previously. But it's like in different circumstances for why you should tell a client no. Not all of them are bad, but some of them can be. So like for young designers or for any kind of designer or person in the customer service industry, like what traits make up a bad client?
Okay. Number 1 is do it for your portfolio. I mentioned that in design pricing again, where somebody comes to you with this attitude of do it for your portfolio or you need me, you know, that kind of thing, where the person is trying to establish a dominance over you. This happens a lot with young professionals, young service people, young designers, young creatives, young creative professionals. A lot of people try to make you feel small because you're young.
Right, yeah.
They try to make you feel something as simple as this. When I'm in a business relationship with you, I don't care how old you are. We are peer to peer because we're both in business. I am in my business and in my field, and I'm the expert in my field. You are in business in your field, and you're the expert in your field. I'm addressing you by your first name.
Right.
Hi, John. Hi, Bob. Hi, Bill. I am not addressing you. No, there's certain situations where, like, if you're dealing with somebody within like an official office, you know, you refer to them by their official title. But where it's just me and another business person, you could be as old as my father. I'm calling you by your first name because you're gonna call me by mine.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I'm not calling you Mr. So and so, Miss this and that, etc. We are business to business peers. Because doing that puts you on the same level. Where you start to refer to this person as Mr. This or Miss That, etc., you start to put them over you.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of disrespect. It's still in your tone and in your attitude. You'll respect them as a client, as an individual, as a business person, in as much as you command respect as a business person as well. You know, the respect goes both ways. So it's not a matter of disrespect. You know, it's a matter of we are in business together. And we had that situation where we had a client who was my father's age. And I had to break myself out, and he introduced himself to me by his first name. And I had to break myself out of the bad habit of calling him Mr. So-and-so. Because it's just a case of, you are a client.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I know that's something, that whole thing about treating people as equals in the business world, that's something you even broke me out of. Yeah, it was like, for those who don't know, Israel here was my tutor in BCC.
It took me about 2 years to get him to start calling me Mr. Mallet. Like, really?
But it's such a natural thing to do.
Because it was how we met.
You're right, exactly.
Right, it was how we met, yeah.
Yeah, so it is a process to kind of unlearn that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the age disparity between us is not that large.
True. That is true. That is true.
So, but it's all about how you meet a person as well too.
Right.
You know, but you're mentioning about like bad traits to watch for in a client. Somebody who's always trying to beat you down on price.
Oh yeah, like they're trying to it's like you can't do this for less, or you can't do this for like say like especially if they come to you with a price of their a price that they set,
Mm-hmm.
and then say you get back to them, you get back to them,
I mean, the price that they request.
or price they request, right? Exactly, right?
Because
It's like they request a price, and then you say, okay, but the work you're doing, or the work you're asking me to do is going to cost this much, and then they come back and say, no, can we do it to a smaller number? It's like that doesn't really work out.
in that situation, what you tell the client is, we can meet your budget. Here's what we have to take out from
Right.
the scope in
Yeah.
order to meet your budget. It's like, yes, we can deliver a product to you for X that you're asking for. This is what it's going to look like when we take out the elements to meet that price.
Mhm.
So yeah, we could do something for what you're asking. It's going to be smaller than what you wanted,
Right.
and you let them make a decision based on that. You know, because at the end of it, this is kind of getting back into the pricing conversation, but it's an important point to make. You determine what you do. Nobody sets your price for you. Nobody sets your process for you. And if you see those traits in a client, chances are it might be somebody worth saying no to from the start. It's better to tell somebody no at the start before you engage them than having started the engagement, taken a deposit, and every day you have to wake up to work on that project and feel like, oh crap, I got or the phone rings and you look at your phone like, I really want to answer this body. You don't want that kind of relationship. And if you can foresee that, you have to have a certain degree of foresight, which is why you take a little bit of longer time in the discovery phase of the project, in the having a conversation with the client to figure out who they are, who you are in relation to them, so that you can be like, you know what? I don't think this is a good fit for us. I don't think you are a good fit for us, or we are a good fit for you.
Right.
And for that, I think we're gonna pass on this. Just because somebody meets with you, or asks to meet with you, or asks for your services, does not mean you have to say yes. You are well within your rights after that initial meeting, even after sending in the proposal. Nothing has been signed. They're well within their rights to say, don't worry. You are well within your rights to say no. Again, it's all about not trying to be too hungry for work. You want to be enthusiastic about work, yes, but you don't want to be so hungry that you're just grabbing at any and everything.
Yeah.
You have to leave room to say no to clients you don't want, or clients you can see would be a bad fit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which is I think is a learning process for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you can't become so invested in the idea of the project, or the idea of the client, or the idea of having a client.
Yeah.
You can't become so invested in that you just turn your blinders off to everything, all the alarm bells that are going off.
Yeah, and I think that's something to watch for, especially when you're a newer business. Yeah, because it's like, I think we mentioned this in the previous podcast. It's like, if you don't have the reputation to kind of back up your prices or anything like that, people will look to undervalue what you're doing. So it's like, I think that's definitely something you should look out for.
Yeah, another sign of a bad client: people coming to you with like shady requests. They may come to you and they're trying not to be too clear or too open about what they're doing. If everything is on the up and up with the client, they should be able to answer your questions about what their business operation is.
Right.
We had a client who was in a certain industry, and we were booking newspaper ads for them. It didn't seem weird to us at first, but they were like, just use their first name when we're booking the newspaper ads for them. And we had a contact at the newspaper we were working with at the time. One time, she was doing a booking order, and she called me and she asked, what's the name of the client? And I gave the client's full name. It so happens, I think, however it happened, the client found out we gave his full name. This client called and they were irate, up in arms, completely upset that we gave their first name, tirade on the phone. And I'm like,
it was a big deal, right?
what's the big deal?
Yeah.
That person was later in hot water. Not because of us mentioning their full name, but because of how they were carrying out their business operations. We didn't know at the time, and thankfully we were able to get out of the business relationship before everything hit the fan, because it was like, from that moment, it planted a seed in my brain, like, we need to start exiting this engagement, because if they're going to respond to this by simply using their last name, something is wrong.
Yeah, that's shit.
So we
That's
started
very
to
shady.
back away from this client. And by the time after we got out of the engagement with the client, months later we heard they were in hot water for something they were doing business-wise.
Okay.
And it was like, oh.
Yeah.
So, red flags.
Yeah.
Do not ignore the red flags. Tell a client, when you start seeing people being too shady, stuff like that, you don't need it. You don't ever need a client bad enough that you ignore the signs that they're a bad client.
I think we've covered a lot of topics. We've covered a lot of areas.
Covered a lot of no. You never knew that a two-letter word can have so much
context.
Yeah.
So just to summarize, I think we talked about why you should tell a client no. And I think some of that comes down to if the scope of the project is outside of your range, if you don't have the time to actually do the project, if the budget in question is not suitable to the tasks.
Yeah, if the budget is inflexible.
Yeah, budget is inflexible. And you also talked about making sure that you maintain your integrity when you say no. And it's also saying no with kind of, as you put it, provisions. Like giving some context, giving the client like some options.
Potential solutions to their problem that may not involve you. It may be involving you or may not involve you.
Right, yeah. And I think also in the coming out to the later parts of what you said try to stay away from clients that they clearly don't show that they value you, that they devalue your work, and clients that are trying to set up a dominance. I think you put like a dominance hierarchy with your relationship. Like essentially, it all comes down to pricing and relationships.
Yeah, pricing and relationships.
Yeah.
And to that dominance aspect, you can rise to that dominance as well. For me, I tend to be a more reticent sort of personality.
Yeah.
Most people don't know about me that I used to be an introvert. Like if I took the Myers-Briggs personality test 4 years ago, I was an I, and 2 years after that I took the test, I was an E. So my personality completely it changed. But people are like, what? What? No, never an introvert. Yes, I was. I have the tendency, less now, but still, I've had the tendency to shrink in the face of that level of dominance or domineering kind of personalities. And I've had to grow beyond that. And if you are that type of person, you have to grow to meet that. You have to rise to meet the occasion. You cannot allow yourself, no, you're not going to be disrespectful. You're not going to, you should not try to change who you are, but you grow as a person. And you realize, you know what? I have a value. I am valuable. My skill sets are valuable. I'm providing quality.
Yeah.
I have a voice. And you use it. And you use it strategically, and you do not allow someone to shrink you back. You own your space. That's very, very important. That helps you to be able to say no. Because if you are the type of person who will shrink back, you're going to cower to requests of people that things you wouldn't normally do, you're going to say yes to.
Put yourself at disadvantage.
Exactly. So you have to have backbone, spine, be able to have confidence in your abilities and your skill sets to be able to say no. And when you say no, obviously it may not just be no, but when you have delivered your no, shut up.
Yeah. Don't say anything.
Don't try to contextualize it further. Don't try to explain it away. No, when you have said your no, you say your no firmly. If it is your no with provision or your no with options, you say your no firmly, confidently, and then be quiet.
Yeah.
Let the room sit in silence and give the person a chance to respond.
Let it marinate.
Let it marinate. Yes, let it soak in. And let them have a chance to say no. Chances are they're going to be waiting for you to be like, well, it's just say no, sit back, keep mouth shut.
Well, yeah, I think that covers about everything that we could really discuss with this topic. As always, guys, if there's anything else you want us to talk about or any questions you have for us, please leave them in the comments below.
You have any other questions for me?
No.
There we go. He's learning, guys. He's learning.
I've quick study.
Quick study.
Right.
10.
Right. So that's all, guys. Please have a wonderful day wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in, and
Remember to like, comment,
and
subscribe
Yeah.
to the channel.
Yeah, and follow us for more. And that's all. Have a good day.
Peace.